presentation. And I'll let you introduce your folks. Do we need to go through introductions here for your benefit?
We're looking at name tag, so I think we're good.
Okay, all right. Well, whatever you want to do. So we're gonna let you do the presentation and then we'll have questions here. We got a hard stop at 3 if we're going that long, because got to get back to Phoenix. Got some kids graduating and some things. So Albuquerque back to Phoenix. So with that, Daniel, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you very much. Daniel Bailick, the Vice President of F4 based out of Albuquerque. And I think all of you want to work with these are local managers. Some of you understand already. I might not know Jeff Stock, who is our senior executive for U.S. Phoenix. Where the daughter graduating, the wife
Right after yours.
Kids are at the airport, right, 7 o'clock tonight. So, with that, we just do a little bit, some of you know who we are, but some of you don't. So I'm going to take a little refresher on EFCO. I think we've got 6 slides here, so I'll thank you for loading that deck for us. And if we go to the next slide, then we're hoping that most of this session can be just discussion. So ask your crew to the table out here and a little bit closer to you, and just I think a lot of what we want is to give you the opportunity to ask us questions. So this deck is a little bit about who we are. So we are a municipally owned private corporation, which is kind of a tongue twister and not the usual thing in our industry. We were started by the city of Edmonton, who corporatized their utilities in the mid-1990s. And today it's our single shareholder. So they created an independent, privately run organization that brings the efficiencies of the private sector, but has an umbrella ownership of municipality. So we like to think that we've got public service deep in our DNA as a company, but we bring the efficiency of the private sector. We have the independent board of directors, blue chip type Canadian and U.S. folks, guys and gals. And we bring a lot of efficiencies. We don't really know the city for our financing. We have an independent financial structure. We're A- rated with standards and floors. We have a balance sheet of about $12 billion, and we put about $1 billion in the So that's us. Next slide. Just a map of where we are. You see the inset below, which is Canada. We're across heavy in Western Canada, across the country. This map used to be reversed, but we thought we would put the U.S. up top rather than an insert like Alaska off to the side. And we're in the Southwest, Arizona, of course, you know us here in New Mexico, and the Albuquerque, East Mountain there as well. And then we're big in Texas. So across that territory, we have some 70 feet of different water treatment plants and wastewater treatment plants. A lot of times when I say water, there are expertise on the wastewater as well. We're equally strong in both areas, service of Southwest U.S. I said I was going to go quick, so I'm going to keep to that because I want to really have a lot of questions, but we move to the next slide. Some, quite close to 1 million people in the U.S. rely on us, and I'm going to let Jeff talk to this slide a little bit. That picture you see there is one of our recharge fields in Arizona that was put a soccer field on top of it. But Jeff, do you have any comments about this?
Sure. This is kind of sharing some of our accolades. So we apologize for that, but safety is first for all of our employees. In everything we do, we've been able to have a world-class OSHA recordable incident rate. We understand what makes our business run. It's people, particularly the ones out in the field. So if we're not creating an environment for them to work safe, then we're not going to be successful. So over 300 safety awards that we've received, we have last year had a consolidated incident injury rate for our employees of less than one for roughly 500+ employees, which puts us in the above the top decile in terms of safety industry wide. 5.7% system-wide water loss. It varies. We have different districts, but by and large, all with the exception of a few that we're working on are under 10%. That's that is an important factor in running a water utility. You know, the proverbial, you want to wring the towel and get as much water out of it as you can. That is representing that we are making sure every drop of water we make is going into the pipes and staying in the pipes until it's available for the customers. 95.5% of our treated effluent is reused or recharged. So in Arizona, we will create recharge fields where we'll put highly treated effluent and let it percolate, get back down and recharge aquifers. Or otherwise, we're using that water to supplant the need for potable water use. It's, I mean, you know, parks and other public amenities, if you treat water to a high degree, it's usable. It's not, there's no risk to human health. But it makes a heck of a lot of sense to be using that water in those locations rather than potable water that you're making that people can be using in their households. So you see, we've got a number of water professionals. That includes our Canadian folks, but in the U.S. regulated business, we have roughly 350 employees that run all of our regulated utilities. We're providing service to close to over 1 million people in terms of the number of districts that we have. And 240+ certified operators. So we go out and we find the guys that know what they're doing. One of the things that I've enjoyed working with EPCOR is our ability to empower people to be innovative. You know, people can sit behind the desk and try to figure out how you're going to be efficient. It's the guys in the field that really know where you're going to pick up those efficiencies. And so we've employed a model where we empower our guys to react to those things. And so I personally, I feel like we have a robust approach to running the utilities. And this picture, as Daniel said, we partnered with the community in North Phoenix, Anthem. There's an underground recharge facility there that will recharge 1.5 million gallons of water a day, subsurface, and so above it. They came to us and said, let's figure out how to use this space. As you can imagine, all the regulators were saying you can't do that. Makes perfect sense, and you can see that actually you can do it. We provide the irrigation water for this facility as well, and so great way to serve water, be good stewards of the resource and enhance the community.
Good. So I think we only have a couple more slides. I probably should have said, you said, well, let us ask questions. So you'll be able to remember, I think, with just a few slides we have, that whatever questions you want to note down. So I want to just talk a little bit. So when we talk about regulated business, as Jeff just mentioned, we're talking about rate and service quality regulation by New Mexico, the Public Regulation Commission, in Arizona, it's the Arizona Corporation Commission. But we also have, and that's probably 85% of our business here, regulated stuff, and we're the provider in the community that's regulated by what the regulator in that area is. But we have a small part of our business that's just contracted infrastructure. Up in the top left corner is a picture of part of our Vista Ridge system. So our regulated business, we might serve a population of about 2 million people. Vista Ridge supplies 20% of the water needed in the city of San Antonio, Texas, which is a population of another 1.5 million people that depend on us. That we don't count in our numbers, but that's 145-mile large diameter pipeline coming from the groundwater source. That we cool the water, and you can see the cooling on the background, steam coming off it. And we pipe it down to San Antonio into storage, terminal storage network for the system. I think it's roughly 45 million gallons per day to provide day in, day out around the clock. Going to the right, Britannia Mine Water Treatment Plant. We built that 20 years ago, almost to the day. They've been operating ever since. There's a mine in British Columbia that was leaching acid rock into the, which is called the Howe Sound, killing the aquatic life. The province of British Columbia hired us to figure out a way to treat that water to go into the sound and will return 100% of the aquatic life that sound. Below that is the Sandow Water and the Blue Sky Project. We were engaged by Samsung, building a multi-billion-dollar chip factory in Taylor, Texas, to supply their water. We've got a 27-mile pipeline that's filled with groundwater. We're treating it through a water treatment plant, putting it into the semiconductor plant, and then coming out, which is even more complicated, a highly complex wastewater treatment plant. We bring the water, the effluent from the semiconductor factory back into the front of the plant and recycle a large portion of it. This is ready soon to come online. It is one of the most advanced wastewater treatment plants in North America by far, and large as well. And then finally, the Darlington demand water, so it's a demineralized water plant. We're also just about ready to bring this online. That's to supply demand water to a nuclear power plant in Ontario. We're a contractor through an international competition and won that competition. So I'm trying not to sound braggy, but in this, I wanted to give you an idea of the level of expertise that you don't see if you just live in Clovis or in this region and you think about exporters and municipal provider. You have an incredibly high level of expertise in America. So next slide, and I think this may be the last slide. You know, someone might ask, well, what about your rates? And I can, you know, we can talk about what might happen down here, but in Clovis, and give the example, we've operated, this shows the last 15 years roughly. If you look at the blue line, that's Epcor's rates. We had 2 rate increases in 15 years. We're probably getting close to another one. We've only done that twice. Each of those bumps in the blue line is our rate increase. We did it again twice. I don't remember exactly. I think one was about 8%, one was about 6%. They were single digit increases. If you average that out over the 15 years on that graph, you can see the number 1.4%. That's an annual average compounded growth rate of 1.4%. If you look at inflation, which is the orange line, that's 3.1%. So we beat inflation over the period, and to the economists in the room, in real terms, our rates are going down over the last 50 years. It's not a lot of utilities can say that. The numbers up to the left, we all got a franchise fee. I think it's 2% for the CFO. So annually we send about $200,000. I think more than that now, but roughly $250,000 back to the city. We also pay their reservation fee for the new project, which is about $18,000 or $19,000. And all that blue line, back to the blue line again, last year, if you took the 12 months of 2023 and divide them by 12, it's an average bill for the average residential customer. But that doesn't include wastewater. In Clovis, we just own and operate the water system. So that's a separate bill. So that's just a picture of, you know, how effectively we get a lot done. We put about $5 million a year for the Clovis system every year. Just gotta keep up with it. When that reflects the impact on the customer. That's it. Yeah. Oh no, not at the slide. So put this together. Just a little bit of a graphic of you know, if the conversation between our company and your community goes forward, how do we do that? I'm trying to put a lot in a picture. And if you look at the circle with the black outline, you read the words public engagement, system reliability, affordability, and customer satisfaction. These are some of the guidelines that we operate within our philosophy of our company. So put that on the outside, and then the lighter blue circle on top. These are some of the things that we've talked about with various members of your political board. What would we kind of have to together figure out? And one of those is state funding. It is $20 million available. When is it available? What can it be used for? These are some kind of things I think before we moving forward or as we move forward, we want to determine. Also condition assessment. Here. We're really what, you know, if you look at it with engineers and operators, where things need to be fixed up. And then when you combine those two things, the condition assessment, what was needed. Minus the 20 million that hopefully you're getting from the state, what's left? What is the capital expenditure plan? And what would the rate impact of that be? Because we want to keep affordability in mind, which we always do. What would the future look like? I think we want to, as a group, understand all those as a, you know, early steps to how we can together. And then in the bottom part, these are just a lot of the things that, you know, are on our mind that we're always looking at, some of the things that Jeff talked about, safety and training and system losses and the water and anyway, part of the reuse of the water cycle, we talk about how that all fits together. And then in the middle, you know, contractually, how would we look at it? How would that be structured? What would you how would we work together? Would we do all those kinds of things? Part of the state process under statute for acquisition of this includes appraisal, includes some votes in the city council. How would those be done? How would that go forward? What is the time of that? How would you want a time to transfer the advantage of the state money before that's exactly where we want to go? And then some of those things that I just walked you through are on the blue bullets in the side. And then in green, kind of lurking in the background, some more of a question than anything for us. Where's the city of the co-op? How's that location going? How does that affect it? There's a fair amount of customers there. It's one physical system, even under different ownership. But how does that work together with whatever that is last stuff? Yeah. So I wanted to kind of plow through that real discussion, question, some comments. If you're the that
Well, who wants to start? I have several questions here, but I'll kind of reserve mine and maybe they'll get answered along the way.
I guess I'll just start off by saying, gentlemen, thank you all so much for being here today. We greatly appreciate your support and your willingness to come visit us in Portales. As I'm sure you have been told since you're here, we face a very, very tough obstacle in the near future and the years to come. But we are just very, very grateful for you to sit down with us this morning or this afternoon and just discuss this with us. I know a couple of the questions that will be brought up are with your rate structure. Of course, that's going to be based on a cost of service study that you're going to have to do to really figure out what it's going to cost us on a timeline like that. What can we expect to figure out? Is that something that you'll be able to determine before any of these agreements take place, or is that something that would have to wait until afterwards?
I think we both, city and company, we want to get comfortable with what that future looked like wise before.
Okay.
Or there. So my view is to say, okay, before let's keep the conversation going, let's keep moving forward. We want to do a couple of things concurrent. One would be the emission assessment, which would imply a capital. And that capital plan would have a rate impact. So right, we want to model that. We have people that be talking about that. What rates. Nobody on our side and your side wants to walk into a situation where rates are going to go. Affordability was one of those things that wrapped around everything we are and what we do. We saw an example of Clovis, and we've done a pretty dang good job of keeping that contained. So we want to feel comfortable that we could do something similar here. Now, having said that, you know, without knowing the condition assessment, this is capital against business takes a lot of money. So. What is needed compared to the 20 million? I don't know what that balance is, so we want to get it for that for you.
I got a question. You talked about coming, your company comes out an umbrella from another city or how do you do that?
Well,
You say a municipality. But you're not a municipality. You come out of other cities doing that, whatever.
yeah, everywhere we operate, we have local employees, so everybody in Clovis that works for Epcor goes to Clovis. We're all our employees are from the community, it would be a similar situation where we don't have extra employees hanging out with us when it goes. So we would, hopefully, structure an arrangement with the city where existing employees all became part of the new effort. And if more employees were needed, give it to them over the fires and trade. Or
I got another question. When you talked about the reserve, does the state, you gotta have it in the state or the city has a reserve there for you to use whatever you have to use or whatever you're gonna pay?
talking about the $20 million.
At 20 million.
Yeah. So, I mean, I more want to hear from you about the availability of that money, but if in fact, as I understand it, 20 million roughly is dedicated to the water and wastewater systems here. That would be something we together would want to take advantage of before any.
But what I'm wondering is where are we gonna get the $20 million to have in reserve just for that?
Well, you would spend they're saying that you would expend the $20 million before their ownership takes place. So we,
Terminal effect rates, among other things, but that's coming from the state. That's already allocated from us. Or to us from the state.
I thought we had to have. He said we had to have.
No, it's two different things. You're talking about reserves, but what he's
Well,
talking
that's what
about
he said. Yeah, I'm not talking about reserves.
from,
He's the one that said that they require reserves. Right?
I think we're
The
talking.
only thing you talked about reservation was the Ute Water Reservation, that I recall.
Okay, if that's what the question is, we paid for the city of Columbus's obligation to the Eastern New Mexico Water Utility Authority for the water reservation. That's something we covered.
All right.
Daniel, on a follow-up to the state funding. Once, if we get some process in play and we start moving forward, are we gonna still be able to go after state funds year after year to assist in that process? So in other words, if we go after another 4, 5, 6 wells next year, will we still be able to work together to do that year after year? I guess that's what, can we continue to complement what you're doing with state funds that we might be able to?
It depends on how we structure the path forward together. If in fact it's a full privatization at 4 points in state funding company.
Okay.
Not impossible. As an example, that board got $2.5 million a couple of years ago, state grant. To build a line from the end of our system to the airport. Those would be. Things like that, we can qualify. Capital outlay, not so much.
Gotcha.
So. That highlights the importance of making sure we spend 20 million, and if we come up with a condition that identifies a larger number than 20 million. Maybe we figure out a way to do more application before transfer to what we should have. Or maybe there's a split where you go with water. That makes sense, not where that allows for a continuation of it.
Right.
When we look at perhaps the water and wastewater system separate. I don't know, it would require a lot of thought.
Right.
Very good question, and something we need to be very sensitive.
Let me follow up on that. Let's just talk about 20 million. We're probably only going to allocate 8 of that 20 this first year. So I mean, they're not gonna send down 20 million right off the bat. That's what I was told last week, week before last, from the water trust. Somewhere around 8-10 million this first year. What our application said for that 20 million was 2 storage tanks, up to 3 million each. And then, acquisition of water rights, land, so forth. So those are the conditions of the 20 million so far, as far as what the application that we put forward.
Do you have flexibility or you're locked into the things of what you plan?
I would never say we don't have flexibility. I can't completely answer that, but I do believe that we would have some flexibility around justifiable flexibility. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I think, you know, if we were to be involved, one of the big benefits of a company like us, is our ability to do long-term planning for utilities and staging in prioritization of how capital dollars get spent. It may be that what we apply for is the absolute best, smartest use of funds. But we probably want to give you our opinion. We go through a condition assessment with the product cheaper. If it ends up there, maybe it does.
I can probably find out by tomorrow what our flexibility is with that through not only mainly through the New Mexico Finance Authority. So they're who appropriate, well, they don't appropriate it, they're who controls the money once it's been appropriated. So, and since it was appropriated by legislation, but I don't believe that the legislation ties us to any of this stuff. So that in itself gives us some flexibility.
And in terms of the 20 million being spread over a couple of years, if we were to go forward, just the PRC process alone, 9+ months. So you capture that next year. There need to be one station. More grant money you get, less than that.
Whenever y'all have a question, just
Okay.
pop them out there.
And this is gonna be a two-part. If we did not have 20 million, would you be here talking to us today?
Yes, I mean, so one thing you should know about us. We have no lack of capability to finance anything.
But I just want to know, would you be here talking to us today if we did not have 20 million coming down from the state?
Yes, and you should be clear that we benefit as a company at none at all from the 20 million. It's all about the rate paying, not having to pay through rates. Because when we invest our own dollars, one way or another, at some point in time, that comes back into rating account.
And in one of your initial slides, you said something, the city, you didn't get any funds from the city. Were you talking about Edmonton or just all cities?
No, our owner, our shareholder, yes, we have one share of stock and it's all owned by the city of Edmonton. We don't get funds in that.
You don't get city funding.
No,
Okay, and your slide on your ability to help people in New Mexico is Clovis, Texaco, and Albuquerque?
we're outside of Albuquerque in East Mountains. Right now, that's our footprint in the east.
East Mountain, meaning what?
Edgewood.
Edgewood. Okay, thank you.
I know during some earlier talks, you talked about being able to take farm wells and back them back over. And then if the farmer was willing to bring them up to code as far as cementing them in, putting the pad and all of that stuff. And as long as the well was enough production that you would look at running a pipeline through this time. Is that more of a feasible option than drilling new wells at this point? Or I know we're kind of handcuffed on what it cost us to drill a new well because of the governmental regulations. And you as a private entity could probably do it more cost efficiently. That's what I'm trying to get at, so. I'm sure it all depend on where the wells were at, how long of a distance you're having to tie a pipeline in, and things like that. We've got several that have contacted me, looking towards being able to sell us water. So I think that's an option for the future, along with putting on new wells. And along with that, how is your relationship with the Office of the State Engineer? How do you go about, are you having to drill wells in Clovis all the time, or do you have to file for permits? Is that something that y'all do also?
Yeah, you asked a lot of questions. But in general, I think that's a really smart way to go forward. When I took the job with that point in 2009, we never drilled another well after it. Because it seemed to make sense to me. Why take, I saw the distinction, we as a company saw the distinction between paper rights and wet water. And it was a growing. So why take the risk on the new well when we could go down the road to a farmer and put that risk on the farmer, not on the company, not on the ratepayer, and say, hey, as long as you got water, you can let me test it and video it. Call like we make sure everything is right. And you put as the farmer a few dollars in, bring it up to municipal standards, and we'll lease your water on a volumetric basis as long as there's water there. We'll be comfortable that it's there so that we can make that investment in transmission like we talked about. That's a way smarter deal than me, way less risky deal for the customer. We've done nothing about that since we've done it. So yes, we've got a good relationship with AMD and we're all the time up there. We've got close to 80 wells now for 10 engines. Which is not unheard of. Jeff and some of his systems only has 10 engines sitting in one platform. Maybe 2 or 3. It's not going to stop. So that has to be a continuous part of what we do. And it would probably be something if we got that. We have 2 conversions we're working on right now, but I don't think 14 quarters is enough. I think it's part of the reason why we saw it behind the chart.
Well, I think we've got to be proactive in seeking a way to ensure that we have water for the future. And yes, the youth water pipeline is a great thing that hopefully happens. But we all don't know what's going to happen 2 years or this next year or tomorrow. So typical government programs would be if the new administration comes in and they look at it and say, we're cutting the funding to that. Everything that's happened so far, it's just going to sit there idle and not be an option for us. So we've got to be able to look at it and say, we've got to be sustainable on our own without that. And if we get that, great. But to me, we've got to be looking at all options to ensure that we've got water here. And that's why we brought you guys.
So I appreciate that. I appreciate your philosophy. And I think that's the right way to look. If you think about the basin, nobody knows that. I would a lot of farmers either, but somewhere around 95% of what's being pulled out is going. So this was the original philosophy when we changed the leasing program. The water is there. We just have to put the right program and incentives in place to go keep that immediate conversion. And that will buy us a lot of time. Now it's going further and further out of town, costing us more and more money, getting more and more difficult. So, all of us are praying for need to come in, but I think it's a fairly sustainable income program.
Well, one of the slides that you talked about that really intrigued me was the fact that you recharge wells and you recharge fields that you talked about. And using the Flint Water to do it. We have had a study done by an engineering firm that, as part of their study, several years from now, had proposed that that very thing happened. A pipeline be put in from the wastewater treatment plant back out to the section of the well field that doesn't have any wells in it right now, that would be recharging the aquifer. So can you give us a little more information about the process of how that's done? It sounded like kind of a gravity feed. Once you got the water there, you're not pressurizing it down into the aquifer, you're just letting it kind of filter in as it goes.
That's correct. Yeah, it's that the picture that I showed, like I said, we had a subsurface system, so probably 15 feet below grade. We have a header pipe with 30 laterals coming off it that have holes poked all over them. But
Like the leach field.
yeah, the leach field, exactly. And but we do it in open ponds too. You go through a percolation test. A study to figure out how much water that ground can absorb and get down into the aquifer. Infiltrometer testing and a couple other things that informs you where is the right place to put it, and then you can put it there. And then, at some point in the future, that can be recovered either by existing wells, or you could drill wells and based on the gradient of the groundwater.
I have a follow-up to that, whatever, that question on the recharge. Are we doing any of the recharge in New Mexico? Is anybody doing recharge in New Mexico?
Yes. We are not in Clovis. We looked at that. Of course, Clovis is a pretty extensive gray water program for irrigation. But yes, there are people that are doing.
You know where?
Rio Rancho.
Okay, Rio Rancho, I was thinking. Did they run into some difficulties with environment for a little bit? Got through all of that?
My last tour of that project was probably a decade ago. If they have, it's been since then, and I personally don't keep. Obviously, what their pages.
Because like Ellen said, I know that we had looked at some issues even out in the Sandhill field. Sorry, just wanted to go.
No, that's fine. That's why we're all here, is to feed off of each other on the questions and hopefully get some good answers, so. My concern had been on the recharge wells is the type of formations that we have here. We have, usually after we get below our topsoil, we've got leachy rock, limestone, strata of rock that you gotta go through. And once you get through that, then there's different stratas of dirt, and then you get the red bed, and that's where most of the water stays above that area. There has been people that have gotten permission to drill through that red bed, and there's what they call a blue clay further down in some areas. And another strata of water down there, and then usually below that is brine water or salt water. So I know that there's been several companies that have started specializing in taking brine water and treating it and making it useful also. Is that something that y'all have got into anywhere or?
Yeah, it seems like we want to answer, but let me just say, we did some very preliminary system to identify the location. We did soil testing and boring. Got through the Fuji and looked to an area that we thought we should logically contain about the red bed. So the pot, it was expensive. Reason we have that. Right. But we think in terms of feasibility, technical feasibility, at least in that location, it works. We did years ago drill through the red bed into the lower docking. 2 holes, very expensive, the test drills, and unfortunately found nothing. But we found very, very low quantities of very high water, not feasible to clean it. In other parts of our system, we do treat water, which membranes and other technology.
Well, I was gonna say that there's the recharge, there's also, don't forget, kind of the lower hanging fruit is how do you supplant the use of potable water for other things that don't require. You don't even have to go through that rigmarole, but what I was gonna add in terms of east south, that's definitely out there. It's been cost prohibitive in the past, but the costs are coming way down on that. We are, my team in the Phoenix area, we're actually involved in a project that is advanced water purification. And so that's making that treated wastewater ultimately acceptable for potable uses. So there's a lot going on in the industry because you guys are not alone in what you are facing. This is happening all over the southwestern United States. So good thing is a lot of people have a problem. A lot of people are trying to solve it, and you get a good idea of that.
Could you expand on the gray water project you told us, how you got it marketed and how many users, how many homes are doing it
Yeah, I'd love to take credit for that, but that's been the city.
within the city?
Right, and we coordinate with them and Mark is part of what they're qualified, and we just keep an eye on what that program does. Yeah, I think that they, at this point, and it's been a while since I've gotten an actual update on it, but they've built out now, I think, the entirety of the distribution system, which basically starts the wastewater treatment plant and kind of snakes its way through the city and ends up kind of northeast of town up by the golf course. And then they're still adding new users, but they've got the majority of the schools are now on it, like the Little League ball fields are on it. And then other individuals, they're still working to community, you know, they have an elevated storage tank now, so they added some additional storage. And now one of the things we were looking at the ASR, a lot for storage and recovery, using the figure that one was one, you know, is there going to be enough of it available to go ahead and, you know, put in users plus what we needed. And so that was an aspect of that too. You know, I think at the time we determined that we could probably have the surplus in the winter when they weren't irrigating, and then in the summer they would like the majority of the people that want for your end users. But it's been a big for us. We've noticed it with users coming off the positive side, so our usage, our demand has gone down with every new end user that they bring on. So it's definitely continuing to help us as far as supply and demand.
Thank you. I'm interested in gray water. That's why I brought that word and see where your knowledge was.
It's a super important piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Question. You're very, very knowledgeable and of course the water and the numbers and the research and all that. Elaborate a little bit on the employees. Because I think a big concern with the city right now, with our city water department, is how do they fit all into all of this? And I know you were talking about you don't have the extra people out there. You utilize what we have. So how does that work? How does that process work? And how does that, what's the outcome of that? I mean, is it definitely, I think I want it to be, I think is everybody a positive attitude and a positive transfer over, but how does that?
So I think in my little bit over a decade with the company, I believe 14 acquisitions. We've always used all the employees that existed. Again, we don't have extra folks. The only thing we require is a drug test. back. Assuming those two things we passed. And in the structure, you know, we haven't really talked about structure, but in the structure of an active. We could set up a system, we could get about only. If those employees were willing. We're welcome. There's the, like the project work out, it's doing pretty well. We've got, we're growing, got a ton of opportunity, ton of ability. For guys who go the convention to move up the ladders. To move across states to the southwest, to look at opportunities for those codes action. We've got a good benefit package. For a long-term employee, a question that can come up is pension. So that's something to figure out, but there's solutions. But yeah, we certainly focus on the more than that. Additional staff that we need to depend on the workload. We spend a lot of time trying to safety, safety. We're all about that, so you need to employ the banker. We go talk to our folks, but I think they're generally pretty happy.
And just to kind of add on to that, you know, I've now been with the water system for 20 years, of course, part of that was the American Water, but started with, I don't know, 2012, and with that for. And they're a great company to work for. I know, talking about, you know, Jeff mentioned how we encourage our employees, you know, and they get things of that nature. So, I mean, we do things. We annually give out like a Boston award, we give out a certain award, they get with the water information and knowledge transfer. I think I said that right. Yeah. But those are at the time when we recognize employees that have come up with innovative solutions to make the jobs better, safer, and more efficiently. So, and as far as training goes, I mean, having good qualified operators is the heart and soul of our success. And we encourage that, we incentivize the employees to go out and get their water certification. You know, and we provide training for that. We bring in third-party trainers that come in every year, do a 3-day workshop to ensure that all our employees have the knowledge what they need, the credit hours they need to not only get their certification, but maintain the certifications that they have to be renewed every 3 years, and have to be credit hours to do that. But we don't burden them with going out and trying to find those sources for training. We bring those in for them. And just to ensure that they're gonna, you know, keep up with the certification. So, you know, as part of what we do for employees, I know, like, if they're starting with a meter reader, it's just been a phenomenal place to work, and everyone is treated with, you know, fairness, quality, and, you know,
Lots of opportunity.
lots of opportunity for advancement. I mean, and we have very little turnover, and, you know, I always say to lose an employee, but opportunities for, you know, if they decide, hey, I might like to go live in Texas or work in Texas. I mean, we've had folks that have left Arizona to go to work in Taylor. One of our employees left to go work for our natural gas operations over there. So there's those opportunities as well. So I think there's a lot of chance for advancement, growth, and
Somebody wants to go to college, you know, incentives to pay for that, so we get a ton of things we work something with.
Great, thank you.
It's important, but
Prior to you were talking about the new pipeline project. How is the relationship between you, Clovis, and the Ute pipelines? What are your agreements whenever the water does go online? How are you buying that from them, and how does the county or the city? How are they involved?
that's a great question, and the answer is kind of to be determined. The way it's structured now is the water from the UDOT authority will go to the city,
Yes.
not directly to us. But that'll be like a paper contractual transfer, because it's gonna go into our pipe.
Correct.
But there'll be, if you look at the contracts that we're gonna have to develop, which have not been developed.
Okay.
The city, which is called the city of Clovis will buy that water from the UDOT authority on paper. And then we will pay title from the city of Clovis, pay, but it's just not going to want to buy system. How much that's gonna cost? Right, there's some projections, you obviously as much as we have. I think part of it could be determined, the system not even building. The cost of the other operating, but whatever that is, will flow through from the city, the Clovis to headquarters, from headquarters to Kentucky.
Well, that makes sense.
You mentioned earlier. You know, I'm interested in how you see that if the city decides they want to do this, how do we do this transition and meet all the requirements that we're obligated to meet in transferring an asset to well, in transfer an asset period. You know, you mentioned earlier appraisal. I know that from what little I've done through procurement and all, you know, an appraisal approval by the Board of Finance. And again, it depends on, you know, I guess any asset over $25,000 has to be approved by the Board of Finance that transfer those. And I understand to be determined. I guess, do you have any idea that determination of what all would transfer?
Yeah, this is another one, which, you know, if you want to grab your lawyer, we want to grab ours, we want to kind of figure it out together, because it hasn't happened a lot.
Right.
And it's not something we pursue as a regular part of what we pursue in developing our business. We more react to the needs of us. Try to get that out, but we're a step ahead maybe with Texaco. Probably where we have I entered in August to an emergency operations agreement. Lost their two operators with an option to buy the system. So we've been thinking about it a little bit.
I mean, they would have the same obligations we would have, maybe a little scaled down a little bit, but
$100,
maybe.
right? So we thought it through a little bit, and an appraisal is required. So we, together with the city of Texaco, identified a utility appraiser out of Dallas. They just voted. These are hard animals to find, but utility appraisal, they do it right. They do a couple. It's got to be really solid and really well experienced. So that's a piece. I believe the city has to take one, if not two resolutions. If a certain percentage of the populace doesn't petition against it, I think that's why we don't need to vote in public. But believing I'm not an attorney. But based on the conversation that we've had so far, I think that's the general setup, and then once all that happens, we have to go to PRC together. And request their approval for a color certificate of convenience in its which stakes out this service area is at along the way we want to develop a franchise agreement that allow for us to access city rights of way. None of this is going to happen quickly. It's a long process, and we want to be mindful of making sure we grab as much state money as possible on the way. So it takes a fair amount of thinking to really map out that process. That's, I think those are the pieces.
I mean, that's the concern that, one of the major concerns that I have is that if we move forward with this is, you know, dotting all the i's and crossing all the t's that come with being a governmental entity.
Yeah. Well, we're good at. That's what lawyers are for, right? This is not, you know, it's something we can figure out.
Right.
Set out in statute. I got a letter from our attorney, you know, a year or two ago explaining it to me, when we started, like a year ago, about the Texas. Texaco. So I mean, it's a known process.
Right.
Even though it's not been follow very often in the state. It's something that we do. We've got an excellent reputation in the state for the nice environment, far back for the state engineer and our capabilities are well. Concerned from that end. But you're right, we want to make sure we do it right.
Any idea or projection, how long you think that process would take? I mean, I'm thinking a couple of years, maybe, I don't know, or to complete all the process of the transfer. And then I know you and I talked once that we were talking about different options of whether y'all bought it out completely or just if you could go into some of that, or there's more than one option for how it could operate, I guess. If I understood you correctly.
Yeah, you're probably not far off. You're gonna have a couple of years. Like I said, the PRT process alone is not. It's not. And it takes him to show up one day and say, here, I want this done, you got. Okay, 3 or 4 months, people put the filing in the other, quite extensive. Then you back up from there and do your votes. How those must be spaced out in between. And allow time for the citizens to comment and participate in the game. You're probably not far off when you're looking at all the time frame. Layered on that, you want to be sure we get the state.
Right.
Yeah, so I think that's probably the general time frame. In terms of how we structured it, probably a lot of options. Well, one of the things that we talked about, you mentioned, like whether or not the water rights would have to be a part of the transaction. I gotta admit, I haven't fully thought that through, but I'm not sure that they have to be. We're more concerned with making sure we have access to the wet water. I don't know that if it's important to the community, to the council to maintain ownership of the water rights themselves. I think we want, an agreement about how that future would look like together if you own them separately. For example, if we see a well that you could get more production out of, if not for, having the water rights assigned to it. We made a recommendation. We want to make sure that is accurate. So with the coordination. In terms of actual ownership, they needs to be done. Then we can talk about the water separately, whether it's the reason of transferring ownership on that or not. These are things that we have to think through.
I'd like to go back to something that Diane asked about earlier. I look out here and, we've got a bunch of good employees that work for our system and they've really come up and I mean, they've stepped up over these last few months and things are pretty positive. And you mentioned, Daniel, pension plan that they're on. If I see a guy back there that's got, 22 years in it, he's 3 years away from being able to, cash out 75% whatever it is. And that's one thing I want to make sure if we decide to move forward, I want that decided, or I would like to see that decided early on in the process about how our employees are going to be taken care of if we move forward and
Yeah, so I've come across that issue a couple of times, which is why I identified it. But I frankly never done what I'm about to say. But I know it can be done, where you can lease an employee to maintain, if you do have this person been there 17 years and 3 more years. We could, as EPCO, could lease that employee from the city so their pension is maintained and they meet their numbers. If they were to decide that's a better option for them personally than becoming a part of EPCO and operating. We never hit that situation where an employee decided that, so I don't have personal experience about how that works, but I understand it can be done. But I think either way,
I think there would be some due diligence to make sure how that would happen if we were to move forward because PERA is a pretty nice retirement program.
Yeah.
I would say employers with less than 10 years, maybe, but from 10 years on out, they're pretty well vested. Just want to make sure that we would handle that properly on their benefit.
fully acknowledge and agree with that. We have the solutions. We want to have employees, so if that means saying that we are. And that's another factor.
You know, I have a lawyer in my family that just shake my head. I get it, lawyers involved, so.
Well, this is a public meeting, so I'm not gonna. But they come in handy.
Well, like my daughter says, you may not like them, but when you need one, you want a good one. So,
Yeah, and we got some good ones.
I know in some of our previous talks. We have discussed, what the process would be, and part of that would be for you guys to come in. And either take data that was given to you or bring in your own team to analyze and, look at our system, look at our wells, look at our treatment plant, go over all of that and, see what our options were. Um, the city of Clovis is doing their own wastewater treatment plant, correct? Correct. Okay. Where is the closest plant that you guys have that's a wastewater treatment? There's one.
We're doing ones in the Albuquerque area on a contract basis. We've got certified wastewater. And I described to you earlier, we're building something that's complex. We certainly have the expertise. And we want to think through what as far as the leaders there, I don't know what that is, but the condition which that's like.
Well, I know we've hired another engineering firm to look over all of our systems and see what our shortcomings were. I don't know how close we are to getting the report back from them. You guys got it? Yeah, feedback on that.
Workforce out there next week. We'd love to see that.
I know you'd already said you wouldn't want to reinvent the wheel. Information's there that you could use it, but so kind of leading into that, what would be the process if we all agreed here today that we want you to continue to look into it and see where we go from here?
Yeah, part of that was in the bullets on the front side, and but I think the condition set, we already have probably develop that was. We probably start thinking about some kind of preliminary contractual structure to both sides company. Bring in some operators to what. You know, it's see if I can say this the right way. Engineers do their job very well and design things, and operators get in and they don't always work the way they were supposed to be on a sheet of paper. And not every problem requires something to be built to solve it. And so that's why I think you get a big benefit by not only looking at an engineer, but doing it, but experienced operators taking a look at how things are running as well.
For sure. Operators operate in the real world. So.
Daniel, would it be fair to say that city of Portales is totally different from the city of Clovis, not by size or anything, in water? City of Clovis have had American Water Works and you're part of as a private entity. So that was more a merger than what we're talking here. And we're talking public entity versus private. So would the transition be a little bit different? It's going to be a lot different because of some of the steps we have to go through.
Yeah.
Because of when you American Water Works, Clovis bagged out of water, owning water.
Right.
And so American Water Works is a company that you bought.
Right.
So you can't buy the city.
Right.
So can you walk us through how this will really happen?
Yeah, you're totally right. When we actually bought the shares of New Mexico American Water. So same company as this, just a bit of shareholder, that transaction happened. And, yeah, I think you're also right, this is ancient history, I went around, but I understand that, then SPS. So wanted to get out of the water business, they offered it to the city of Clovis for $1. No, the city of Clovis, no.
Never want down for that.
So that should not be an article.
Actually, there were other conditions that kind of had the city backing off. My wife was the city manager secretary.
Okay, you took probably no more than this, yeah. But so yes, totally different, this would be the device by municipality, not the private transaction. And all the things that we talked about in statute. I'm pretty sure the two sets of resolution. Would have to, we would have to. approve, And we have to do an appraisal. Here, do an appraisal. And that's key too, because it's really not about the price of the asset. It means, frankly, we could afford to pay. Whatever the dollar amount is, you want to be concerned about not putting that on the backs of the ratepayer. So to me, it's not about the price of the transaction, but you might both want it to be very low. It's about our commitment to continuing to invest in the system to make sure you build reliability, sustainability, and an affordable price. That's all of our focus.
So in other words, when you go to PRC, if we went through this process, would we be a part of your expansion to ask for a rate increase with PRC?
Whenever we go to the PRC to ask for anything, it's a public process. And as an example, when the 2 times in the last 15 years we've gone for a rate increase, we share everything we're gonna do with the city of Clovis and their consultants and their attorneys. And they become a party to the case. And they represent the interests of all the citizens of Clovis. They check all our numbers, everything's open for everything. They may have a difference of opinion on one of the things that we do and the PRC decides. So it's a very public process, and any citizen, for that matter, could become a party to the case. The formal process, in outstanding. Yeah, it's all open, it's all public. Not much we can do. So that's a level of protection.
Thank you.
Donna, I don't want to catch you completely, but I know you were a major advocate for water conservation and all things water in this region. And I'd just like to give you an opportunity to address this and share any thoughts that you have.
Wow. Well, thanks, Councilman Rick. I appreciate it. And I appreciate this entire council and the effort you're making. And you're looking at every single option you possibly can to get rid of the wind here in Portales, but I would say, a key player for us definitely is Edgewater. They have been from the beginning. And the water they saved, the water conservation efforts that they implemented have been significant and have continued to show a decline in how much water is on a daily monthly basis. And Daniel could better cite the actual numbers, but they dropped, I believe, from 12 million gallons. Is that per day, right? 12 million gallons per day for a 3-year period, like 12 and 11 and 10, and now they're at 9. That's a significant drop.
Yeah.
Just from water conservation efforts, just from doing the important work that they're talking about day in and day out. So when you add that to effluent water reuse, and you add that to what we're trying to do in focus with the groundwater for a supplemental supply, and you take all these factors into consideration, you're truly building a water portfolio. Wouldn't that be an amazing thing for Portales, New Mexico? This is my hometown. Born and raised here, graduated high school here, and we lived here. I still have family here. But I think a water portfolio just makes good sense overall. And gives you that sustainability we were talking about. And for us in Clovis, Edgewater's been a key player in the sustainability factor.
I mean, we can't afford to do all the work they don't do. There's no way we could do the laying pipeline and trying to get from this well to that location and constantly refurbishing, replenishing, taking care of infrastructure. It takes a lot of people to do that, but it takes a lot of expertise to do that. And to keep the water system functioning and flowing freely, and no one sits and ponders if they're going to have water or not right now for us. And I think that is, there's a collective effort of working together, continually working together, with every piece that I've mentioned. But it really helps having this water utility working on our behalf, and I don't think people give them the credit that they're due, because I think they were a lot of hours. I think they're willing to get out no matter what, when the systems break down. I think if there's a leak, they want to be right on top of it, because that's just water loss. I think no matter what's happening in the water world, we may not see it, but these guys are about it day in, day out to ensure that we're water resilient. I don't know if that helps you, Councilman.
It does.
Daniel, there's one piece there, a couple pieces I don't want to forget about. You talked about you invest about 5 million a year in the infrastructure in Clovis. So that long range plan we come up with, once you guys do an evaluation of our system, we would kind of vet that out ahead of time, right? We'd say, okay, looks like we're gonna need this amount of work in year 1, year 2, et cetera. Right? I mean, I assume that's kind of the process we go through together. Right, a capital plan to improve our infrastructure and get things.
I think you want to be comfortable where you're heading, and we want to be comfortable where we're heading. Employees to the ratepayers and taxpayers, and people want to make sure this is the right route.
And another piece I wanted to talk about at some point, and I know you guys do a lot of it, is like you said, on the conservation piece, you guys do things in Clovis, like with the toilets and if you could talk a little bit about what you're doing, how did you get that conservation piece working as well?
Yeah, so I took the job in 2009. We hit a peak that year, just shy of 12 million. Exactly right. For us, looking at that global system, our barely, we're the same out for the world, barely were able to beat it back then. Yes, it's the face was the fastest, cheapest capacity to buy. It's not using conservation. So we went to the PRC with a pretty comprehensive program. And for rebates for stuff, give away flow restrictors for hoses and kitchen sinks and everything we could think of, and spent about $100,000 a year of just public awareness. And at least that much in annual rebates. And that bought us 1 MGD that following year. We dropped to 11. And then next year we dropped to 10. And the 4th year to 9. Kind of flattened out now. We've been at 5 years. So we backed off a little bit of focus, and not to get too much in the weeds, but you always have to be very conscious of where you as a utility bring your demand levels down, because you also have to have enough usage to pay for refurbishing the system. So it's a titration that you do, and we naturally have settled, because I think we got a lot out of its first 4 years at about 950, and it's enough to keep in the system, people close doing what they want to do.
I have one question. If we were to move forward with this, would you house a office here in town? And if so, how many jobs could that possibly create?
The answer is yes. We definitely have an office here. And between the jobs, I don't know enough about your system and what people is, what the right staff and what it is. Get into that much.
No, excuse me, I know we've thrown a lot of what ifs at the scenario, but it sounds like you guys are open to multiple scenarios of as far as operations and owning. I've talked to several different citizens and they seem to not want to give up the water rights. Sounds like it would be an option for us to keep the water rights. And I guess thinking a lot about it before this meeting, is there a possibility that you guys kind of a hybrid, you own just outside the tanks from this side of town and us own the well field, but you guys operate it with some type of agreement? Could that, so for example, we would be the farmer essentially, but you guys would help us run it. Is that an option? Do you think that's a win-win scenario for everybody?
Like to get the opportunity to think about that before. I mean, you're more than just like a couple of seconds.
That was deep.
It was pretty deep. Yeah, without putting pun intended. I think, I thought a little bit about the water expressions. I've heard some of that feedback. I think that pretty clearly something we're not easy about. They haven't really had time to think about it either. But to me, that's pretty clean, I think. I mentioned one scenario where we want to have a cooperation. We need to move water rights around. Cities have to say no. But beyond that, whether or not we would want to make that line of demarcation further into the system and continue over the wells, what implications that has for liability, and who fixes things up when, and the new wells, who owns those, and it could get messy. Just thinking out loud. I'm not eliminating it, but it would do Parsons. I think from an operations standpoint, we mentioned in some of the previous meetings that we've had, you know, that our reputation is very important to us. And so from an operations standpoint, we would want to do what is going to allow us to have the most control over what's happening, right? Because if we're going to take responsibility for providing reliable service to the systems of the tower, we need to make sure that we now put controls in place that are going to do that in an efficient and speedy way. So we want to make sure that whatever that looks like, so again, they're not saying that isn't a possibility, but I think from an operational side of things, we want to make sure that we have it structured where we would be able to have that reliability and comfort level, you know, knowing that we would have control over this.
I still think that we could have the best of both worlds. We can still own the water rights, let you guys operate everything. Because I think we're leaving a lot on the table unless we let you do what you do in the well field. And if we continue to operate it, I'm not saying our guys aren't capable of that, but we have so much red tape that we'll have to go through that you guys can kind of circumvent around, because all you've got to do is supply clean water to the system. And you do have some stipulations in there also, but we've got way more as a municipality to have to go through. So I think we'd be leaving things on the table for you not to operate that well.
I think I would just want to mention, I think the company could over, you know, talk earlier about the relationship between us and the authority and focus. One thing that is important for me is that it is very much a partnership between all the parties involved. Now we include Texaco, so you know we have a very good relationship with the city of Clovis, and everything that we do, we look at it in partnership with them. You know, same way with the authority. We're all, we know that we're gonna have to work together for many years to come, and we look at that as a partnership and a relationship that we have with Mexico, because it's very much a regional deal. And we would want that same kind of relationship with the town. We don't want to be. And so anything that we did do would be structured that way, would be a partnership with the city. And helping them what's best for the citizens themselves. Just because we operate, but we're always. That's what I think.
And we know what you're gonna put into the well field every year based off of your numbers. That's, you know, if we have to still operate the well field, we're gonna have to look for funding and that may be an obstacle for us at that point of time, if we can't get it.
Other questions? I think we have, go ahead.
Do you deal with the state land office much and new processes, or is it mostly private land that you guys are on, state land that you operate on?
We have some water easements as well, that sit on there.
Because that's gonna be a large part of what we're gonna be looking at.
And we've got land people that take care of all that.
Well, first of all, I do appreciate this, and I think it was important that all of us sit here. I know you've met with some of us here and some of us there, but you know, sometimes maybe I didn't hear the questions that it actually, some of my questions were answered by questions previously asked. So, you know, I appreciate that all 9 of us were sitting here. I appreciate you guys making the time to do that. I really appreciate you guys making the time to do that. You know, I think there are several next steps. I think there's a lot of things we all need to investigate as we informally move forward, if you will. The question about state monies, the questions about, you know, leasing employees, you know, I think if we can start answering some of these littler questions that really aren't little, if you will. I think that kind of starts putting it together that we can take the next steps, and that's what this body so chooses. So
There's nothing that I heard today that I think would be good. Yeah. I don't know how to solve these. This would counsel against put too much into the weeds of this stuff. Is there a solution for it? But whatever level that you want to dig into and investigate, you can comfort. I think go ahead and do it. I feel more comfortable with you all. Whatever next step.
you know, I think one of the questions you asked early that I don't have the answer for, but I think probably is what is the flexibility with that 20 million in case we move forward and we want to change directions on that. I think that's an easy one to find out.
And that seemed like area not deal for it. If it's set in stone, I don't think it is. Right. But that county does use it, but if there's some tweaks that have together, we could look at that. Reset the priority and follow that.
So any other statements?
No, I mean, we appreciate that. It's a community that gone through some, tough summers. Water, up the road, see that. And we're here to help if we can.
Appreciate that. I will tell you, and I think that you need to know that these gentlemen and ladies that are sitting behind you back here have really stepped things up. I think they've got us on a good path for the present, for the time being. And I really want to give them a shout out because I know they worked hard at it, and I know they're concerned about this conversation, and as they should be. And I appreciate your consideration there as well. I have one final question for you, Dan. Who's going to be the next state engineer?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know the answer. We're a little bit surprised by that as well. But I don't want to skip over this. We applaud the utilities too, the job that they have in front of them is intense. So we think Jeff and Bob both said is most part of the part of who we are, what we do. Incredibly valuable. The fact that they're doing what they're doing. I trust that they are on the right path. We can bring some value to the company with our experience and resources.
Mr. Mayor, I don't know if it'd be appropriate to do, but I was wondering if we could ask if Chris or Eric or some of the guys back there had any questions we overlooked that they might want answered. If there was anything we should have asked on your benefit, for your benefit.
I think you got it covered. They really do.
Okay.
I think if you come up with those, if you'll get them to us.
We'll
Get 'em
explore
forward.
anything you want us
I'm
Yeah.
sure.
This ain't the only conversation we'll have, so. we can come up-
Sure, absolutely, and we'll be glad to explore anything you guys want us to check into or learn or find out. So I just didn't want you feeling like we weren't asking your opinion.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Yeah, so.
Yeah, yeah, you just mentioned it, right? We've taken over in recent history. Some systems that were. The way we're shaped and what we understand we do that. Like that, but as a result, we've developed relationships with the mayors and city councils in those communities where they've got a lot of gratitude. What we've done. It's, if at some point in the future, just like employees, maybe want to come visit with our employees and answer their questions. The council wants to visit with some of those communities. City councils about their experience is something. Appreciate it. Appreciate that.
No, good. Well, again, I really appreciate you traveling from Phoenix. Hope you're not in too much trouble with your daughter and all that. It's
Congratulations.
hopefully get you back, yeah. Daniel, thank you guys again for being here, and we'll definitely stay in touch, and in the meantime, we'll kind of sort out some of these little things that came up today that we can probably get some pretty quick answers to.
If we can help you, please let us know. You know, where to send us.
All right,
Perfect.
appreciate it,
Thank
guys.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.